Hello all. Today's class is on food safety. We'll be covering a lot of topics in this. It is based on, in our UGC net syllabus, very little, only, very one module is only given about food safety, but it's a very, very elaborate topic. So I'll try to cover as much as possible so that we don't miss out in important parts. Okay. So let's see, we're going to be discussing about food safety in general. What are the food contaminants and food standards and laws and agencies which are, regulatory agencies of food safety. So let's come. So food safety, the safety of food produced, served and consumed is of course of utmost importance to everyone because, food is something that is there for everybody alike. It is the basic necessity of life. So food production centers are usually a lot, it is a breeding ground for a lot of microorganisms, our kitchen, the restaurants that we eat, because food, humidity, right temperature, this is all the, good conditions for microbial growth. So all of them are present in our kitchen or wherever we store or prepare food, etc. So because of that, it is a very environment which is conducive to the spread of infection disease. So it should be controlled, monitored through strict regimens. Then only you can, ensure that hygiene or food safety and sanitation is ensured. So what is the definition of food safety? Food safety is defined as keeping food safe to eat at every stage. That is purchasing, receiving, storage, preparing, cooking, holding, cooling, reheating, and serving as it passes through the flow of food from farm to table. So from different, from farm to table, from the time the food is harvested, the food is grown, food is produced, harvested, it is, stored, it is received, prepared, cooked, hold, it is being held in the kitchen, like, after cooking, you keep it out for some time, then you cool it, you keep it in the refrigerator, then you reheat it, then you serve it. All those while, you need to have you need to take care so that, the food does not get spoiled in any of these stages. So the relationship of food, safe food and wealth is also well established, because naturally, if you don't have safe food, naturally your health will be affected. And of course, health being affected means productivity is affected. And of course, your money is also affected. Everything is affected. So the problem of getting safe food is very severe in public eating places, etc., like restaurants, hotels, etc., where a lot of, large quantity of food is pre-prepared, just held and then finished on demand for service. So naturally, that is why we hear a lot of complaints every day about, food being spoiled, and there are a lot of food poisoning cases every day. So because of this, the World Food Safety Day is marked by the United Nations General Assembly. It was on December 20th that, the scheme to commemorate a day for world food safety was decided. That was in June 7. It's considered as the World Food Safety Day. It is actually organized by the WHO, the World Health Organization, and the Food and Agricultural Organization jointly. Okay, the theme for the World Food Safety Day in 2022, safer food for better health. So you see, safe food is something which is very, very important. Now let's see a very important term, food contamination. So when do you say that a food is not safe? So food contamination refers to foods that are spoiled, or they're tainted because either certain microorganisms are there or any toxic substances are there which make them unfit for consumption. So contamination can occur through many different sources. It could be due to from the environment, it could be from the, from the storage area, or it could be some toxic metals, dioxins, or any intentional use of chemicals like pesticides, animal drugs, any chemicals can be there, or even physical matters can be there. So, different, the food can be contaminated from anywhere from the farm to the table. So it could happen in any of the various processes that happen when the food is being processed. So regulation of food safety is very important. So since 1976, the WHO has implemented the Global Environment Monitoring System for Food Contamination Monitoring and Assessment Program, okay, which has informed the governments and the apex body, that is Codex Alimentarius Commission, and other relevant institutions, that is the trends of contaminants in food, their contribution to total human exposure, and significance with regard to public health and trade. So let's see what are the different types of hazards which are present in foods. The first one is physical hazard. So physical hazard is any extraneous object or foreign matter, and which is like a physical substance, for it can cause illness or injury consume for a person who consumes the product. So any foreign object, like for example, some metal flakes, you're eating a packet of chips and you see some plastic in it, or you can see a nail or a metal flake, or some things like that. It could be pieces of the product packaging, it could be stone, glass, wood, insects, anything. So something which is not normally found in the food product. So these are all physical hazards. So what happens is, like, if you there are any stones or etc., like in rice and all, when you prepare, if there are stones and all, it can block your throat. Such things can, there is a chance of choking, etc. Now, next one is chemical hazards. Now, chemical hazards also cause a lot of foodborne illnesses because they can be, different chemicals present in foods. There is something which is harmful. You know that food is basically chemical in nature, like we have carbohydrates, proteins, minerals, etc. But which something which is extraneous, something which is causing harm, those are called as chemical hazards. So they can include, sulfite, sodium nitrite, lead, environmental additives, like something like residue of fertilizers, pesticides, or even cleaning agents like our sanitizers or lubricants which are coming in contact with foods can cause problems. Now certain times what happens is, certain foods innately have some chemicals in it. For example, like in tapioca and all, there is cyanide present in it. Like there is a small amount of cyanide present in it. Glycogenic glycogenic cyanide can be there. Then some fishes like mycotoxin, patulin, certain shellfishes contain certain poisonous substance, certain mushrooms can contain certain chemicals. So those are also chemical hazards. Now the next one is microbiological contaminants. Now this is the most common type of contaminants because microorganisms are capable of causing a lot of human diseases. Like sometimes our microorganisms are everywhere in our soil, in the water, in the air we breathe, in in our body, etc. So when the food is not properly handled and maintained well, what happens is these microorganisms can grow to a great number and it can cause you diseases. So the different types of microorganisms that can cause diseases is like bacterial hazards, viral hazards, and parasitic hazards. So let's see all of them. First one is bacterial hazards. So bacteria we know is some of the good bacteria like lactobacillus and all are very good for us. Like for example, when you are making curd out of milk, you use a good bacteria, right? And also in fermentation and all, you need these beneficial bacteria. But what happens is certain bacteria species are there which are pathogenic or which causes diseases. So disease causing bacteria are called as pathogenic bacteria. They contaminate all the production, they contaminate the food. Now, there are certain foods which are more prone to these contamination, like milk, shell eggs, poultry, fish, meat, etc., because they support more, the growth of bacteria because they are very moist. They have more moisture, and they are full of nutrition for the microorganisms. So you see that there are different types of pathogenic bacteria. So let's discuss some of the pathogenic bacteria which are very commonly seen. The first one is the most common is Salmonella. So Salmonella is very frequently reported cause of foodborne illness. It lives in the intestinal tracts of infected animals and humans. So what is the disease caused by Salmonella? It is called as salmonellosis. It is an infection causing diarrhea, abdominal cramps, and fever within 8 to 74 hours after ingestion of the contaminated food. So actually there is a incubation period of 8 to 72 hours. That is, the symptoms start like after once immediately after eating that food. You don't go to rush to the toilet or anything. At least it happens after 8 to 72 hours. You can see up to 72 hours there is a chances, that is up to 6 days, sorry, 3 days, there is a chance of the symptoms being present. So it could be something that you ate 3 days back. So because of the fact that Salmonella has this incubation period of 8 to 72 hours. The next one is Shigella species. Now, Shigella infections are also foodborne, and they're all passed from fresh produce, that is from fresh vegetables or fruits, because of the improper hygiene of food handlers. Like in the fields and all, It can be that because the human, if it is not very clean, like it is the production water, the type of environment is not clean, then the Shigella species, it's common. So common symptoms of shigellosis is also diarrhea, fever, stomach cramps. This is also has a incubation like 1 to 2 days after the exposure, and it usually results in 5 to 7 days, almost like a week it takes for that for the symptoms to go off. Next one is Staphylococcus aureus. Now, the Staph aureus is the causing agent for gastrointestinal illness. It is referred to as Staphylococcus food poisoning. It is caused by contamination of food with bacterial toxins that are resistant to heat. That is the biggest problem of Staphylococcus. Most of the bacteria, we have heard that, after on heating or boiling, most of the bacteria die. That is, it doesn't cause much of harm, especially if it is salmonella and all. If you cook it really well, if there is a chicken egg or something which is, like if it is, affected by the salmonella, what happens is if you cook it really well in good temperature, what happens is there is a chance that it will go off. But the case of Staphylococcus, the problem is it is resistant to cooking. So it is a common, and it is a very commonly seen also. It is a common bacterium which is found in our human body. It is there in our skin and nose of, up to 25% of healthy people and animal. So this is, improper hygiene during food handling is the most important cause of Staphylococcus poisoning. So this is one of the, it is present in our body. So, if you don't wash your hands properly, you handle your food in the wrong manner, this is a very common problem. Now, other pathogenic bacteria, there are different other like, Escherichia coli or E. coli, Campylobacter jejuni, Yersinia, Listeria, Bacillus anthracis, Bacillus cereus, Clostridium botulinum, Clostridium perfringens, a lot of other bacteria are also there, which are also pathogenic in nature. Now, bacteria reproduce very easily and quickly if the conditions are good for growth, like, adequate nutrients, humidity, oxygen level, moisture. If everything is good, then they multiply very well. So that is why we have to keep in check these bacterial levels. Next one is viral hazards. Now, compared to bacteria, viruses are even more smaller and they cannot reproduce and multiply outside a living cell. So they cannot like grow or on or inside food like as bacteria do. But then what happens is if it is on exposure to contaminated water, soil, or any surfaces which contains these virus, the viral hazards can get transformed to the food also. So there are different viral hazards. The most common one are noroviruses. This is something that causes gastroenteritis. They are found in the intestines of infected persons, who can easily pass them on. So, this is a group of virus, okay, because it is, the names are like Norwalk-like viruses. That is why it is in short called as noroviruses. Now, this is also has a lot of symptoms like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, stomach cramps, low-grade fever, chills, headache, muscle ache, etc. Now, usually what happens is the illness will begin very suddenly and then the person gets really sick. In most people, the illness is self-limiting and it lasts for about only 1 to 2 days. So this is very commonly seen. Next one is rotavirus. Now, this is also very common. Severe diarrhea, especially among children. This is the most common cause, that is rotavirus. Now, the mode of transmission is fecal oral, means it is coming from the fecal matter of infected people, and from there, like, through contaminated water or anything, this can lead to, like, the person can get it to the mouth of another person. That is what is called as fecal oral route. That is from the fecal matter of an infected person. Especially if if they are like they don't have proper toilets or anything, if it is like outside, etc., what happens is that the water, air, all those can give it can transmit the virus to another healthy person. Now, the virus is very stable in the environment. It can occur through ingestion of contaminated water, food, etc., and also even contaminated surfaces. Now, this is rotavirus is actually characterized by vomiting and watery diarrhea, which lasts for 3 to 8 days. And there is also fever and abdominal pain. So the disease tends to be mild, but even it is very common in children. Even adults are also affected. Next one is hepatitis A, which is a very infectious liver infection. It actually affects the liver. It can cause jaundice, nausea, abdominal pain, etc. It can be spread through direct contact, infected food, sewage, etc. Now, it is actually something which is preventable by vaccine. There are hepatitis A vaccine because it is highly contagious and it actually affects the liver. So if it is not less, it can actually last for weeks up to months also, and it is for some people it can lead to a lot of complications also. So that is why they have vaccines for hepatitis A. Now these are the different viral infections. Now we'll go to the parasitic hazards. Now, parasites are organisms that derive nourishment and protection from other living organisms known as hosts. Now, the parasites, mostly like tapeworms, ringworms, or all those ringworms, helminth species are parasites because they live on another person or another human being or animal. So it can be transmitted from animals to humans also. They live and reproduce within the tissues and infect the human and animal hosts, and they are often excreted in the feces. They may be transmitted from through the consumption of food, water, or by even oral contact with infected surfaces. If you're drinking dirty water, etc., also it gets transmitted. Next one is another parasite is Cryptosporidium pavum. This is a protozoan parasite that lives in the intestine of many herd animals like cow, etc., like sheep, goat, etc. So it is also something to do with water and foodborne illness. Cryptosporidiasis, which is accompanied by watery diarrhea, stomach cramp, upset stomach, and slight fever. Now, this is also passed on via injection of water of contaminated by the this oocyte, that oocyst, which is the infected stage of the parasite. Now, the cyst form is environmentally resistant, and that is why it can be shed from the feces of a host. Next parasite is Entamoeba histolytica. Now, it is a protozoan parasite that causes amoebiasis, which is also a food and waterborne case. Like the case is very common in developing countries due to unhygienic food, water, etc. The symptoms are quite mild and include loose stools, stomach pain, cramps, etc. So amoebic dysentery is a severe form of amoebiasis, which is associated with blood in the stool, and also which is accompanied with fever and stomach pain. That is Entamoeba histolytica, which is another protozoan parasite. Now, the next one is Giardia intestinalis. Now, it is also another protozoan parasite that lives in the intestines of infected humans or animals. Now, it is found in soil, water, surfaces that has been contaminated with feces of infected hosts. It occurs in every region throughout the world, and it has been recognized as one of the most common causes of waterborne illness. So it is protected by what happens is the giardia is very common because of the fact that outside of outside the body it can survive for long because it forms a cyst so that it is protected by an outer shell, and that is why it is found in surface areas, water, etc. So it causes diarrheal illness. It is also called as giardiasis, which is the typical symptoms, just like the others, are diarrhea, stomach cramps, nausea, etc. So what are the major sources of biological contaminants in foods? So mainly it is from fecal contamination. So that is from animal guts. That is the animals, they become hosts of these parasites or these microorganisms, and their fecal matter will contain all these microorganisms. The soil and water which is contaminated by non-treated manure like cow dung or any other fecal matter. So are the those soil and water which is in contact with this contaminated waters, etc., contaminated manure, etc., which is not treated, will also contain these microorganisms. Then cross contamination. Now, cross contamination means, for example, if you are like in the kitchen and all, there is a chances of cross contamination. Like, for example, when you are using chopping boards, like for the for meat, and for vegetables, if you're using the same chopping board or knives, what happens is there is a chance that, when you're cutting the meat or raw meat, and then immediately without washing it properly, you're going to cut the vegetables, means it can lead to cross contamination, because meat as such, raw meat will contain a lot of microorganisms, and then when you cut these fresh vegetables, these microorganisms from the knife or the chopping board can come into contact with the vegetables. So that is called as cross contamination, contamination from two different sources coming together. So human contamination also can lead to like poor personal hygiene, like skin, clothing, especially hands. If you don't wash your hands properly after going to the toilet, etc., it can cause contamination. Then infection control, if you're not taking medications, etc., that is also a problem. Then cross contamination from different environment, improper sanitation, if the drainage sewer system is not good enough, then also it can cause the microorganisms to come into the environment. Now let's discuss very important part, that is food standards and laws. So different laws govern the food processing sector in India. There are different regulations or law that prescribe different standards regarding different aspects of food, like food additives, contaminants, food color, preservative, labeling, all this. So in order to rationalize a multiplicity of food laws, a group of ministers was recently set up to suggest legislative and other changes to formulate a modern integrated food law, which will become a single reference point, instead of different laws. A particular ministry and a particular central law was made for all the food laws and regulations. So it is, the food laws in India are enforced by the Director General of Health Services, which is under the Ministry of Health and Family Affairs, which is of the central government or government of India. So this is Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, or FSSAI, was set up. Now, before FSSAI was set up as a one single law, a different number of different laws, regulations were there, which started in like as early as in the 1950s, etc. Like as soon as India became a republic, a lot of laws started being formed for the protection of our foods, etc. So the first one is the Prevention of Food Adulteration Act, or PFA, of 1954, and it was amended in 1955, 1 year later. It protects, it's actually the basic law which protects India against impure, unsafe, and fraudulently labeled foods. Like fraudulently labeled means if something is for example food adulteration, to for example, when if you're buying some masala powder, and if it contains any other adulterants like brick powder or any other colored substance, that means you can file a complaint against this Prevention of Food Adulteration Act. Now the act was enacted by the Parliament in 1954 to make provision for the prevention of adulteration of food, along with the prevention of food adulteration rules in 1955, which was incorporated in 1955. Now the next one is Fruit Products Order. Now this is a law, or a it is exclusively for all the fruits and vegetable products. Okay, it comes under the Essential Commodities Act of 1955. So this is like to manufacture fruits and vegetables which follows or maintains sanitary and hygienic conditions. So it is mandatory for all manufacturers of fruit and vegetable products, like like sugar, syrup, jam, jelly, all those products which contains fruits or vegetables are mandated to have this FPO. Okay, they have to take into consideration the different rules or rules laid out by the FPO, or Fruit Products Order. So the minimum requirements laid down by the Fruit Products Order are location and the surroundings of the factory. So there are specific set of rules that need to be followed. Then sanitary and hygienic conditions of the premises, or the environment should be neat and clean. Personal hygiene, that is, personal hygiene means all the workers should follow some basic hygienic practices. Then water should be drinkable. Then machinery and equipment should be good in working condition. Quality control facility should be there. There should be technical staff who's trained in such things. Product standards should be maintained. And there's, of course, the one very important part is limits for preservatives and other additives should be strictly followed. As we had mentioned, there is an acceptable daily intake, and so for each of the preservative or color, there is an acceptable levels So beyond which it becomes toxic. So particular any food materials should be, all the colors or any other additives should be only within the permissible limit. It should not go beyond that. So it was earlier implemented by the Ministry of Food Processing. Now this FPO is like implemented by the FSSAI, or the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. So the Directorate of Fruit and Vegetable Preservation is there, which has its headquarters at New Delhi. So when you're studying for this exam, please note all these different regulations, year, etc., and when it was enacted, which under which ministry it comes under, and what all are the different what all rules or regulations are coming under it. So mention about FPO, which was established in which was regulated Act. It comes under the Essential Commodities Act of 1955, and it is under the what do you say, FSSAI, and it is enacted by the Directorate of Fruits and Vegetable Preservation, which has its headquarters at New Delhi. Now the next one is Meat Food Products Order. Just like the name suggests, MFPO or Meat Food Products Order, it was set in 1973 to regulate production and sale of meat products. First of all, the manufacturers need to be licensed. They should enforce sanitary and hygienic conditions, especially all the meat products. Means I'm not talking about only the meat products which are packaged. Okay, those products will come under this purview. And that is meat food products. They should exercise strict quality control at all stages of production, because naturally meat, fish, etc., they have there's tendency to be extremely contaminated, because once it is the meat becomes a little how do you say, stale, what happens is it is a storehouse of microorganisms. So under the provision of MFPO, all the manufacturers of meat food products should be like who's engaged in manufacturing, packing, repacking, relabeling of meat food products meant for sale are should be licensed. Okay, except those who are those products which are for like which does not involve any packaging, like if you are having if you are slaughtering the meat in a restaurant or a hotel or a snack bar, etc., then and the meat is being supplied and used as fresh meat, then it is not coming. Only for those which are packed, or it is in a packaged form, the MFPO is valid. The next one is Vegetable Oil Products Order. That was in 1947 itself. So this is one of the earliest orders. So vegetable oil product industry is regulated by this order through the Directorate of Vanaspati, Vegetable Oils and Fat, which also come under the Department of Food Public Distribution, which is under Ministry of Consumer Affairs and Food and Public Distribution. So earlier there were two orders like Vegetable Oil Products and Vegetable Oil Products Standards of Quality Order. So that is one was in 1947 and the other one is 1975. Now, after that, in 1998, both these orders were combined to a single order called as a Vegetable Oil Products Regulation Order. Okay, that was in 1998, which is meant for proper regulation of manufacture, distribution, and sale of vegetable oil products. So what are the different features of this order? All the procedure of registration has been simplified. All those people who are involved in the sale of vegetable oils. The standards of quality have been tightened. So you have to mention like all those packaged food, vegetable oil sellers should keep in mind the different standards of quality. The requirement where which are they're non-measurable, so that has also been done away with. Means that all those non-measurable things have gone, and all now it is very strict, and it is all the different things are all measurable. The consumer protection is also ensured. Now the next one is the Department of Sugar and Edible Oil under the Ministry of Food and Consumer Affairs will regulate the order, that is the order of edible oils packaging, edible oils packaging regulation order, which was also in 1998. So the Department of Sugar and Edible Oil, which is under the Ministry of Food and Consumer Affairs, regulates this order. Just make note of all these names, make yourself familiar with these names and the year. Okay, the next one is 1967, the Solvent Extracted Oil, De-oiled Meal and Edible Flour Control Order, which was in 1967. Now, this applies for all the oils and fats and deals with the licensing, manufacture, distribution, and trade of solvent extracted edible oils. And this is also operated under the Directorate of Vanaspati, Vegetable Oil and Fats. Now, the next order is Milk and Milk Products Order, which was in 1992, which, it deals with the milk and milk products. Now, it sets, sanitary requirements for dairy, machinery, premises, quality control, certification, packing, marking, and labeling of all milk and milk products. So, this is under the Department of Animal Husbandry, Dairy and Fisheries, under the Ministry of Agriculture. Next one is Livestock Importation Act. Now, this is like for when you are importing livestock from other countries. So, the import of meat products, eggs, egg powder, milk powder, all this require a sanitary import permit from the Department of Animal Husbandry, Dairy, Fisheries, etc., which is under the Ministry of Agriculture. So risk analysis, because when you're importing something like all these meat products from the other countries, what happens is there is a high risk of contamination, because as I've mentioned earlier, milk, meat, etc. are very good source of nutrient for the microorganisms. So a lot of microorganisms can breed on these things. So that is why a strict procedure should be followed while you're importing from livestock products from other countries. The next one is agencies involved in food quality control, which is in the national level. The first one is Essential Commodities Act. Now, this is to regulate the manufacture, commerce, and distribution of essential commodities, like the food, like what do you say, like rice, sugar, etc. So that there is no black marketing, hoarding, etc. Then there is another one, Standards of Weights and Measures of 1976, which is giving a particular order about how weights and measures should be standardized, and it should be well maintained, etc. All the packaged goods and should be all the manufacturers should be registered, and they should follow strict measures. The next one is Consumer Protection Act, which we have studied in the Family Resource Management part. This is the Consumer Protection Act of 1986, which acts for, when you have any consumer problems, to seek redressal in the district, state, or national levels. If there is any complaint you have facing when you have purchased any food materials, it is not just for food material, it is a general order. But when we are studying different laws, we'll study about this here also. That is Consumer Protection Act of 1986. The next one is Infant Milk Substitutes, Feeding Bottle and Infant Foods Regulation Act. Now, why is this so important? Now, infant milk substitutes, like we have seen in the market, like naan, lactogen, etc. These are all infant milk substitutes. Now, they have a special order to regulate their production, supply, and distribution, because the main aim is by the direct Department of Health aims to promote breastfeeding. So these infant milk substitutes should not be given a lot of importance, or should not be marketed too much, because breast milk is the most important thing. Only when breast milk is not available can you give these infant milk substitutes, because that is why this infant milk substitute should be regulated. Otherwise, the companies who wants a lot of profit, they will go for different advertisements, etc. So that should be regulated. The next one is Insecticide Act of 1968. Now, this act envisages the safe use of insecticides, so as to ensure that any leftover chemicals do not pose any health hazard to the foods. Then Export Quality Act 1963. This is also which facilitates export trade through quality control and inspection before the products are sold to international buyers. We know that when you're exporting to different countries like the US or the Gulf countries, etc., they have very strict rules over there. So naturally, the things which are going from our country should meet the standards of quality which are prescribed by them. The next one is Environment Protection Act of 1986. This also it gives rules for manufacture, use, import, and storage of hazardous substances which are used along with foodstuffs, like hazardous chemicals, how they should be disposed, how they should be regulated, how the it should not be given to all the people. There should be licensed sellers, etc. The next one is pollution control. Act. So this is also a no objection certificate should be taken from the state pollution control board for all different food factories like dairy plants, etc. Like if you want to set up a manufacturing business, a food business, you need to get a no pollution control certificate. Just a no objection certificate which you should get from the state pollution control board. So next one is harmonization of all these food laws. So as I mentioned earlier, the government of India took the initiation of harmonizing of different laws and acts related to food safety and regulatory standards to a single law or a single bill, which was, it was acted, which was passed in the parliament in that is for food safety and standards bill of 2006 for harmonizing different food standards and single platform for food safety regulatory standards. And that is how the Food Safety and Standards Act was came into being in 2006, and the law was established in the same year, that is in 2006. Please note, make note of the year. 2006 is the year when the Food Safety and Standards Act was enacted. So what are the features of this act? Now, this act integrates different statutes like Prevention of Food Adulteration Act of 1954, Fruit Products Order of 1955, Meat Food Products Order of 1973, Vegetable Oil Products Order of 1947, Edible Oils Packaging Order of 1988, Solvent Extracted Oil De-oiled Meal Edible Flour Act of 1967, Milk and Milk Products Order of 1992. Now, all these things come under the single act, that is Food Safety and Standards Act. So it is a single reference point for all matters related to food safety and standards. It is coming from different levels. The act, that is Food Standards Safety and Standards Authority of India, was established as an apex regulatory authority which consists of chairperson and 22 members. Now, the act provides the general administrative principles to be followed by the central government, state government, and FSSAI while implementing the provisions of this act. So, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, or FSSAI, is the apex body or regulatory authority now in India which governs all aspects of food. What are the different functions of FSSAI? The first one is framing of regulations to lay down the different standards and guidelines in relation to all the articles of food, enforcing various standards, etc. Then laying down different mechanisms or guidelines for accreditation of certification bodies, like if you want to certify certain food businesses and all, the FSSAI will lay down guidelines how to accredit these bodies. Then laying down procedure and guidelines for accreditation of laboratories, those laboratories which are used for testing of foods and etc. Though how should a laboratory be, there also FSSAI will give the guidelines. To provide scientific advice, technical support to central and state governments in matters of policy framing, rules, etc., which has any relationship with food safety and nutrition. Then collate different data regarding food consumption, incidence, prevalence of any biological risk, contaminants in food, residues of various contaminants. All this data is collected by, it is also in charge of the, FSSAI is in charge of different collection of data regarding all this. Then create an information network across the country so that, all the general public gets reliable information, objective information about food safety and issues of concern. Like if you see check out the website of for FSSAI, you can see different campaigns being led, like by to give awareness to the general public regarding different aspects of food safety. Then provide training programs for different people who are involved in food businesses, so that they get an information about how to conduct safe food businesses. Then contribute to the development of international technical standards for food sanitary and phytosanitary standards of because for international trade and all, it's very important that we match to the safety regulations of other countries also, because our food should not be rejected when you are exporting it. Then promote general awareness of food safety and food standards. These are all the different functions of the food standards and so Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, which is also the apex regulatory body which has brought together different laws concerning foods.